What do you mean the last 3 bags just fell off the belt? Brandon Lowell stood in the middle of his office, staring at the flight operations report like it had personally insulted him. He'd inherited the chain of 9 small city airport service hubs from his father 5 years ago. They handled everything from baggage loading to aircraft cleaning for domestic carriers. Business had been steady, but lately customer complaints had been climbing. Bags arriving late. Luggage arriving damaged. One man even claimed his suitcase showed up with tire marks on it. Brandon had grilled his district manager, but all he ever got were vague excuses: short staff, new hires, bad weather. "I'm not getting the full picture," Brandon muttered, closing the report. "I need to see it myself." He decided to go undercover at the airport. He heard the most complaints about Terminal 3 in Dayton. It was one of the older hubs, and he'd never met the team there personally. His father had built that location before Brandon was even out of college. None of the crew would recognize him, especially not with dyed brown hair, a trimmed beard, and a fake name badge that read Tyler. The company had grown enough that local teams rarely saw the owner. Corporate handled hiring, and the only person who might have recognized him was the district manager, who he made sure would be away at another site during his visit. He showed up on a cold Monday morning just before dawn, wearing steel toe boots and a bright yellow vest. The airport buzzed with energy, but the baggage crew looked miserable. "Tyler, right?" A guy with a neck tattoo and a faded hoodie called out. "You're shadowing me." "I'm Corey." Brandon nodded. "First day. Just tell me what to do." Corey didn't smile. He just turned and started walking. "Hope you like back pain." They got to the tarmac. The first flight had landed. Brandon followed Corey and 2 others: Marcus, a guy in his 20s with kind eyes, and a woman named Lexi who looked like she hadn't slept in 2 days. The crew loaded carts, rushed to the plane, and began tossing bags onto the belt. And Brandon meant tossing. Heavy suitcases flew through the air, slamming against metal walls. Fragile tags were ignored. He watched one bag roll off the belt and land hard on the asphalt. "Shouldn't we pick that up?" Brandon asked. Corey shrugged. "Nah, it'll get reloaded. It's not our job to babysit bags." Brandon frowned. "What about damages?" "They don't care, man. You think they'd pay us more if we cared?" Later, inside the break room, Brandon sat with Lexi while she peeled the label off a granola bar. "You always look this tired?" he asked. She chuckled once. "Dry? Double shift." "Again. Why?" "Short 2 people. One guy quit last week, the other got fired for showing up late twice. Manager said we're not hiring anyone else until next month." Brandon's stomach turned. "That doesn't sound right." Lexi looked at him. "You knew, or just stupid?" He stayed quiet. The next few hours were a blur of lifting, running, and sweat. Brandon's back ached. He saw Corey kick a suitcase that wouldn't fit. He watched Marcus get chewed out by a supervisor named Seth for being too slow, even though Marcus had been hustling nonstop. At lunch, Marcus sat alone, eating from a Tupperware container. "Mind if I sit?" Brandon asked. "Sure. You've been working here long?" 2 years. Just trying to save up for school." Brandon nodded. "You like it?" Marcus hesitated, then said, "I like the job. I don't like how we're treated." He explained how Seth, the site manager, constantly berated staff, refused to approve overtime even when shifts ran long, and threatened to cut hours if anyone complained about safety. Last week, Lexi almost passed out from heat. He told her to suck it up or go home. She stayed. Couldn't afford to lose the hours. Brandon clenched his jaw. Later that afternoon, Brandon watched as Seth screamed at another worker for stacking bags the wrong way. The worker apologized, but Seth kept going, calling him useless. Brandon stepped forward, instinct flaring, but caught himself. Not yet. That evening, as Brandon walked out to his car, he saw Lexi sitting against the wall near the employee entrance, rubbing her shoulder. "You good?" he asked. She looked up. "Just sore." "I'll be fine." He hesitated, then asked, "Why don't you say something?" "Report Seth." She gave him a look that said everything. "Because nothing changes," she said softly. "They protect each other. We're not important enough." Brandon drove off that night with a storm building in his chest. He'd come here thinking he'd find a few minor issues. What he found was a broken system and people breaking under it. Tomorrow he was going back. But this time he wasn't just watching. The second morning, Brandon arrived earlier than the rest of the crew. The air was still damp from the overnight drizzle, and the fluorescent lights inside the service corridor flickered with a low buzz. He leaned against a supply cage, sipping burnt coffee from a paper cup, watching the hallway fill up with groggy, quiet employees clocking in. He spotted Seth down the hall, speaking with another supervisor. Brandon noted the way Seth's posture shifted, arms crossed, tone clipped, eyes scanning every person like he was calculating something. Not once did he greet anyone. Brandon clocked in under Tyler again, then joined the crew near the loading dock. Lexi arrived in a heavy jacket and moved slower than yesterday. She didn't say much, but Brandon noticed her hand trembling slightly as she tied her boots. Marcus showed up a few minutes later, eyes bloodshot. Before they could start loading gear, Seth called everyone to the side of the tarmac. "Listen up," he said, loud enough to cut through the wind. "We're down another guy today. That means no standing around, no second breaks, and no excuses. If I see anyone dragging their feet, I'll cut your shift short. Clear?" Nobody answered. They just nodded. Brandon turned to Marcus as they walked back to the carts. Was someone fired again? Marcus kept his gaze forward. No, just quit without notice. Can't blame him. Their first flight came in from Orlando. The team rushed to get the baggage ramp aligned. Brandon joined Marcus on the belt loader, feeding bags toward Lexi and Corey, who were sorting them into carts. The work was relentless, bags of all shapes, some soaked, others too heavy to lift without bracing. A duffel bag with a red tag caught Brandon's eye, tipped off the belt and landed hard. "Red's priority, right?" he asked. Corey didn't even glance up. If it was that important, they'd fly private. They kept moving. The pace was brutal, but Brandon stayed quiet, observing everything. He noticed Corey constantly stepping away to check his phone. At one point, he disappeared for nearly 10 minutes. Lexi took over his position without complaint. During a lull between flights, Seth walked past the break room and spotted Brandon sitting on the edge of a crate, wiping sweat from his neck. "You want a break?" "No, just catching my breath." "You're not paid to catch your breath." Brandon stood. "I've been going nonstop." Seth stepped closer. "Then you should be warmed up. Go help with the inbound from Chicago." Brandon didn't answer. He just walked. As he approached the plane, he saw Lexi limping slightly. She was carrying a stack of gate-checked strollers toward the belt. "You all right?" he called out. "Twisted my ankle earlier," she said, voice tight. "Didn't say anything?" "No point." Brandon offered to swap tasks, but she shook her head. "If Seth sees me switching off, he'll dock my hours again." Later, inside the equipment shed, Brandon found Marcus reloading water bottles into the small cooler. "You always this quiet?" he asked. Marcus hesitated, then replied, "Depends who's around." Brandon leaned against the wall. "You said yesterday you liked the job. Still feel that way? I like airport work. There's rhythm, you know? But this place? It's like we're disposable." He looked around before continuing. "Corey's been reported twice for skipping safety checks. Once a bag got sucked into the tow tug wheel because he ignored the clear ramp signal. Nothing happened. Seth covered for him." Brandon frowned. "Why? They're friends. Or something. I don't ask." A burst of static came over the radio. Another arrival. They headed back to the tarmac. As they loaded the next round of baggage, Brandon noticed something off. One of the workers, a younger man named Rafi, wore a jacket clearly 2 sizes too big and kept pulling at the sleeves. When he bent to lift a suitcase, the fabric caught under his boots, nearly tripping him. "Rafi," Brandon said quietly, "that's not safe. It's all I had. My coat got soaked yesterday. No backup." Brandon looked toward the office. No spare gear. No dry uniforms. Nothing. By mid-afternoon, the weather had shifted. Wind picked up and the crew bundled tighter into their jackets. As they loaded a heavy cart, a gust slammed the side door of the service truck, startling Lexi. She dropped the bag in her hands and winced. Seth walked up just as it happened. "Pick it up. You're holding up turnaround." Lexi bent over without responding. Brandon stepped in. She's hurt. Maybe give her a minute. Seth turned his head slowly. You want to take over her shift instead? If that's what it takes to treat people like human beings. Seth's eyes narrowed. You've worked here 2 days. You don't tell me how to run my team. Brandon held his stare. I'm not seeing a team. I'm seeing people breaking down. Seth didn't answer. He just walked off, muttering something under his breath. That evening, Brandon followed Lexi to the locker area. You should have told him your ankle was hurt. She looked up, tired. You think he'd care? You shouldn't be punished for that. It's not punishment. It's just how it is here. Brandon didn't respond. He left through the side entrance, passing the alley behind the service office. A voice caught his attention, 2 voices, actually. He paused near a cracked window and heard Corey inside. I told you, man, I'll cover it up. I logged the weight manually. They won't spot the mismatch. Better not. If TSA gets wind, we're both screwed. Brandon's pulse quickened. Weight logs were critical for flight balance. Falsifying them wasn't just careless, it was dangerous. He stepped back, walked to his car, and sat for a long time before starting the engine. The weight logs. The unsafe uniforms. The twisted ankle. The verbal abuse. The skipped safety checks. The missing staff. Too much was broken. And the people suffering were the ones doing their jobs right. He knew what had to happen next. Tomorrow, they were going to find out who he really was. Brandon arrived just before sunrise, parked in the furthest lot, and walked the long stretch to the employee entrance without his disguise. No vest. No fake name badge. No hesitation. Inside the back office, he found the morning supervisor reviewing the shift calendar. She turned when she heard the door open and froze. Mr. Lowell? Where's Seth? She pointed toward the ramp office. Brandon didn't wait. He stepped through the doorway to find Seth and Corey talking near the radio terminal. Both turned. Seth blinked, confused. Can I help you? Brandon kept his voice even. Yes. You can come with me. Now. Corey looked between them, then tried to slouch away toward the lockers. Brandon cut him off. You too. They followed him into the break room. A few crew members had already gathered, half of them seated with coffee cups, others still shrugging on jackets. Lexi stood near the back, arms crossed over her chest. She looked up, eyes narrowing when she recognized him. Brandon faced the room and spoke clearly. My name is Brandon Lowell. I own the company you work for. I've been here for the last 2 days under another name, doing your job, watching how this place runs. Murmurs broke out. Seth's face went pale. Brandon continued. I came because I was tired of hearing excuses. I wanted to see it for myself. And what I saw was completely unacceptable. Seth stepped forward. Sir, I'm not sure what you— Brandon didn't let him finish. You berated staff in front of others. You threatened to cut hours for people who were injured. You ignored basic safety violations. And when someone tried to speak up, you shut them down. That ends now. Corey shifted uncomfortably beside him. Brandon turned. And you falsified load logs? I heard it myself. Do you have any idea what could happen if weight distributions are wrong on a flight? Corey opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Brandon looked at both of them. You're done. Hand in your badges. You're not walking back out to the ramp. Seth's voice cracked. We're short-staffed. You fire us now and the whole morning we'll pull in relief from Columbus until replacements are trained. I'd rather delay flights than risk lives or keep people working under that kind of leadership. Neither argued further. Brandon turned to the rest of the crew. I saw what you've been dealing with. I saw someone work through a twisted ankle without support. I saw people covering for others who disappeared mid-shift. I saw someone forced to choose between safety and getting their hours. He looked at Lexi, who still hadn't spoken. Her face was unreadable. I owe you an apology, he said, addressing her directly. You kept showing up when no one had your back. That changes today. Lexi exhaled, slow and quiet. Brandon glanced around. Anyone who needs to take a minute, take it. We're rotating in temp support from nearby hubs. You'll all be briefed by noon. But I'm not leaving until this place is fixed. Marcus raised his hand slightly. Does this mean permanent changes? Or just today? Brandon shook his head. We're rebuilding everything. New local leadership. A safety officer dedicated to the site. Mandatory breaks restored. Scheduling reviewed. And starting next month, a wage adjustment. You'll be paid what this work is worth. The room stayed silent. No clapping. No cheering. Just stunned stillness. Now, Brandon said, softer, I want to hear what you've been afraid to say. No filters. What's broken and how do we fix it? A woman near the lockers stepped forward. She introduced herself as Jamie. Her voice was calm but firm. When equipment breaks, we're told to make it work. The belt loader's been jamming every other shift. Sometimes it won't even reverse. It's dangerous. Brandon nodded. I'll have maintenance assess it today. If it's not fixable, we replace it. Another voice came from the back. A man named Ramon spoke up. There's no first aid kit that's fully stocked. And the last safety drill was over a year ago. We asked about it. Got brushed off. Documented, Brandon said. Both items. Marcus finally stepped forward. I've been here almost 2 years. Never once had a one-on-one with a manager that wasn't about a mistake. No feedback. No growth. Just pressure. Brandon looked him in the eye. You want to move up? Yes. You'll get mentorship. Starting this week. More voices followed. A backlog of broken systems poured out. Uniform shortages. Clock-in penalties over 2 minutes late. No protocol for severe weather. Brandon wrote everything down. Later that morning, a regional manager named Elena arrived from Columbus. She'd been with the company since before Brandon took over and had a reputation for turning sites around. She entered the ramp office, scanned the room, and got straight to work. Brandon briefed her quickly and pulled her aside. I want Lexi considered for operations lead once she's ready. She knows the floor better than anyone. Elena nodded. If she wants it, she'll earn it. By midday, flights were running slightly behind, but morale had shifted. The crew moved with purpose, not fear. Marcus took charge of one of the belts, helping guide a newer employee. Jamie coordinated gear checks without being asked. Brandon helped where he could. He didn't wear a vest anymore, but he still lifted bags, still ran carts. When Lexi passed him near the utility shed, she paused. You really didn't know? I should have. She looked at him, then said, if you want people to tell the truth, you have to make it safe to speak. I'm learning that. She nodded once and kept walking. In the afternoon, Brandon visited the admin office. A small whiteboard hung near the time clock. He picked up a marker and wrote one line across the top. Your voice changes this place. By the end of the day, notes had been added underneath. We need better gloves. More water stations near Gate F. Replace the broken radio in Cart D. Thank you. Brandon stood there for a while, reading each one. Then he walked back out to the ramp as the sun lowered behind the terminals. As the ground crew moved in sync, no one yelled. No one rushed dangerously. No one was invisible. And for the first time in a long time, it looked like a team. By the following Monday, the terminal's atmosphere had shifted, but the work was far from over. Brandon returned to Dayton with Elena at his side. They didn't announce themselves with fanfare. They walked the floor, clipboard in hand, and quietly observed the first shift roll into motion. The team was operating with one fewer baggage belt and still down 2 employees. But there was no shouting, no rushed shortcuts, and no one was being ignored. Lexi was wearing a new ankle brace, issued through the company's health stipend that had finally been activated for hourly workers. She moved slower than usual but had been cleared for modified duties by a doctor. She now rotated between coordinating inbound tags and helping new hires settle into the rhythm of the shift. Near the tarmac, Brandon spotted Marcus showing a trainee how to secure a cart before towing. The trainee, a young guy named Dom, looked unsure, double-checking the latch. Marcus didn't rush him. He waited, then nodded once when Dom got it right. Brandon stepped up beside him. How's training going? Marcus didn't hesitate. Better than expected. He asks the right questions. Dom glanced between them, then squinted. Wait, you're the guy from last week. Thought your name was Tyler. Brandon smiled faintly. It was. For 2 days. Dom looked confused, then laughed once. Man, that explains a lot. Brandon turned back to Marcus. You still interested in operations? Marcus nodded. I am. I've been shadowing Elena when she's here. She's showing me the scheduling software, how to plan around weather delays. Brandon gave a short nod. Good. You need to understand the moving parts, not just the front line. They walked with the carts toward the gear shed. As they passed the lockers, Brandon paused. One of the maintenance crew, a middle-aged woman in a faded jumpsuit, waved him over. Mr. Lowell. Got a minute? Brandon stepped aside. My name's Rosie. I've been here for 9 years. I heard what you did last week going undercover like that. I'm not here to complain, just. I want to say thanks. No one's ever taken us seriously. Not really. Brandon nodded slowly. I should have done it sooner. She glanced toward the crew outside. There's still more to fix. The heating coils in cart 4 keep cutting out. We've patched it twice, but it's going to fail again. Brandon jotted it down. We'll prioritize it. Rosie tilted her head. You mind if I say something else? Go ahead. You replaced the right people. But don't let the next ones get comfortable just because things are looking better. Brandon met her eyes. I won't. That afternoon, Elena led a meeting in the conference room. The new interim site manager, Carla and Gwyn, joined remotely. She'd been transferred in from the larger St. Paul hub where she'd turned around a similar underperforming site over the past year. Her approach was precise, data-driven, and blunt. Your staffing structure is still vulnerable, Carla said through the speaker. We've got 3 full-timers confirmed and 2 part-timers onboarding. But without a buffer, 1 call-out puts us back in crisis mode. Brandon leaned forward. We'll authorize overtime for now. Limit it to 4 extra hours per shift. That gives us breathing room without burning anyone out. Carla nodded. Agreed. Lexi, seated with them for the first time, flipped through the notes she'd taken that morning. I'd like to propose something, she said. A rotating lead system. 1 person per shift takes the lead on safety checks and equipment status. It gives more people experience, spreads responsibility, and gives us better coverage when someone's out. Elena raised an eyebrow. You've already drafted the rotations? Lexi handed her a printed sheet. I worked on it last night. Brandon didn't say anything. He just nodded once, impressed. After the meeting, Brandon walked the floor again. He passed a bulletin board near the break room. It had been scrubbed clean, now pinned with fresh updates, shift schedules, safety reminders, and a new section labeled Shoutouts. Under it, someone had pinned a note, Marcus stayed late to help me close. Didn't have to. Made things easier. Another read. Lexi brought extra gloves for the new hires. No one asked her to. Brandon didn't recognize the handwriting, but he recognized the difference. Later in the day, he met with HR to finalize 2 long overdue terminations. The first was for Corey. After confirming with compliance, they discovered he had falsified 2 separate safety check logs. It wasn't just negligence, it was deliberate. The second was a supervisor at another nearby site who'd been reported for similar behavior, but whose file had been allowed to go untouched for 6 months due to poor oversight. That culture was ending. As the sun began to dip beyond the edge of the terminal, Brandon walked back out to the tarmac. The last inbound flight of the day was pulling in, and the crew moved efficiently to meet it. No one rushed. No one shouted. Every motion had purpose. He stood beside Marcus again, who was double-checking the inbound tags. You're taking this seriously, Brandon said. Marcus replied, if I'm going to lead eventually, I've got to know every piece of it. Brandon looked over at Lexi, who was helping Dom adjust the coupler on the belt loader. You 2 are going to rebuild this place the right way. Marcus didn't look up. We're just getting started. As the plane doors opened and the belt hummed to life, Brandon stepped back. He didn't need to be out there every day anymore. Not because the problems were gone, but because the right people were now in place, equipped and empowered to handle them. As he left the tarmac, he passed Rosie again. She was loading a toolbox onto a flatbed, humming faintly under her breath. Brandon called out, Cart 4's getting replaced this week. She grinned without turning. Good. I was getting tired of Band-Aids. Back inside, Brandon returned to the admin office where the whiteboard near the time clock had grown crowded. Dozens of notes now lined it, some simple, some handwritten with care, others barely legible but clearly heartfelt. He added one himself before leaving. Better isn't the finish line. It's the floor. Then he walked out into the evening, knowing the real work had finally begun for all the right reasons.